They say you never forget betrayal, especially when it comes from the people who were supposed to become your family. For me, it started with a lie so convincing, so poisonous, that it almost destroyed the one relationship I had left with my father. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't just some naive kid anymore. I had my eyes open, and when I uncovered the truth, it hit harder than either of us expected. This is the story of how my dad's fiancée framed me for theft, tried to erase me from his life, and how I turned the tables in a way she'll never forget. My name is Callie, and when I was 16, my mom passed away after a long battle with cancer. It was the kind of loss that strips your world down to silence. My dad, Aaron, was devastated. But only a year later, he was engaged to a woman named Vanessa. I didn't blame him at first. People grieve in different ways. But Vanessa was different. From the moment we met, she treated me like a threat. Her smile never reached her eyes, and her compliments always had a bite hidden underneath. "Oh, Callie, that dress is cute. I wore something just like that in middle school." She was polished, always put together, but there was something in her eyes, the way she looked at me like I was a stain on her perfect vision of the future. My dad was blind to it all. In his eyes, Vanessa could do no wrong. He called her his second chance at happiness. I tried to be happy for him. I really did. But that woman was not who she pretended to be. It all started small, subtle digs, misplaced belongings, forgotten invitations to family dinners. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe grief was making me paranoid. Maybe I was just struggling to adjust. But then things escalated. My dad had this antique pocket watch that belonged to my grandfather. It was the one thing he never let out of his sight, until one day, it was gone. Vanessa found it in my backpack. I remember the silence when she pulled it out. My dad's face, confusion, hurt, then doubt. "Callie, why would you take that?" I was stunned. I hadn't touched it. I swore I didn't know how it got there. Vanessa just shook her head and said softly, "Teenagers act out. She probably misses her mom." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just passive-aggressive sniping. She was trying to erase me, one planted lie at a time. Things spiraled quickly after that. My dad started keeping his distance. Vanessa would whisper things when she thought I couldn't hear, about how some kids just can't handle blended families, how I was still acting out and craving attention in dangerous ways. Then came the bracelet. A diamond tennis bracelet, supposedly Vanessa's birthday gift from my dad, went missing the same day I came home from school with a headache and went straight to my room. You can guess where she claimed to find it. In my pillowcase. This time, my dad was angrier. "Are you trying to push her away?" he snapped at me. "She's been nothing but kind." Kind. She had just accused me of theft, again. And he believed her. I remember looking into his eyes, searching for the man who used to hold my hand when I cried. He wasn't there. Vanessa had poisoned everything between us. I started keeping to myself more. I barely spoke at the dinner table. I stayed out late just to avoid being around them. But even silence couldn't protect me from her. One evening, I overheard Vanessa on the phone. She was in the living room, pacing in her heels, her voice hushed but heated. "No, I told you not yet. He still thinks I'm perfect. Just a few more weeks, and the money's ours." I froze. "Money?" She paused, then whispered, "Of course I miss you. But this has to be done right." My stomach turned. She wasn't talking to my dad. She was cheating. And suddenly, everything clicked. The fake kindness. The thefts. The manipulations. She wasn't trying to become part of our family. She was trying to cash in on it. I knew no one would believe me without proof. Especially not my dad. So I did what any desperate teenager would do. I recorded her. I downloaded a call recorder onto the house phone line and waited. It didn't take long. 2 nights later, she made another call to her mystery man. I sat in my room, heart pounding, as her voice floated through the receiver. "He suspects nothing," she giggled. "Honestly, he's a bit of a sap. Once the prenup is signed, we can disappear with the money." There it was. The truth. On tape. I copied the file onto a USB drive and hid it in a book in my backpack. It was risky, but I had no other choice. The next day, I told my dad I wanted to talk. Just us. He looked skeptical, but he agreed. I waited until after dinner. We sat in the den, just the two of us. My palms were sweating as I handed him the USB. "I need you to listen to this," I said quietly. He plugged it into his laptop and pressed play. At first, he said nothing. But as Vanessa's voice filled the room, her laughter, her betrayal, her plan to steal everything. I saw his face change. His expression crumbled. When the recording ended, he just sat there, frozen. She used me, he whispered. She used both of us. For the first time in months, he looked at me with something real in his eyes. Regret, pain, and guilt. I'm so sorry, Callie. I should have trusted you. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But all I felt was quiet relief. Finally, he saw the truth. The next morning, everything exploded. My dad confronted Vanessa over breakfast. I stayed upstairs, listening through the vent. I heard everything, he said. The calls, the lies, the bracelet, the watch, all of it. Vanessa didn't even try to deny it at first. She scoffed, called it a misunderstanding. You're going to take that little brat's word over mine? That little brat is my daughter, my dad said. There was a long pause. Then she cracked. She screamed, said I ruined everything, said she deserved better, that she was only trying to build a life with someone who mattered. My dad told her to leave. No yelling, no theatrics. Just leave. She packed her things and was gone that afternoon. And for the first time in years, it felt like our house could breathe again. Things didn't go back to normal overnight. My dad and I had a lot of distance to close, a lot of trust to rebuild. But he tried. He started making time real time. Breakfast on Saturdays. Walks after work. He even helped me rebuild the photo album Vanessa had accidentally spilled tea on months earlier. One day, while we were sorting through old pictures, he said, "You've been through more than any kid should. And I let you down." I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged him. We were healing slowly, imperfectly, but honestly. That fall, I applied to colleges. He proofread every essay, sat through every virtual tour, and when I got my acceptance letter from my dream school, he cried. Tears of pride. It wasn't just about exposing Vanessa anymore. It was about finding our way back to each other. Years passed. I graduated college, moved to a new city, started a job I loved. My dad still called every Sunday, asking about my week, my coworkers, my lunch habits, like he was trying to make up for all the lost years. And in a way, he was. He even met someone else, a woman named Elaine. Kind, warm, no hidden agenda. She baked pies for the neighbors and asked me about my favorite books the first time we met. He didn't rush anything this time. No rings, no promises too soon. Just quiet companionship, and it felt right. As for Vanessa, she tried contacting my dad a year after their split. Said she'd found God, wanted forgiveness. He didn't respond. We didn't need to reopen that door. What she did taught us both a lot. About trust, about family, and about listening when someone cries out, even if their voice is small and scared. Because no one, especially not a child, deserves to be doubted when they're telling the truth. Sometimes I still think about those days. About how close I came to being completely erased from my father's life because of one manipulative woman. But instead of anger, I feel something else now, gratitude. Because what Vanessa did, as cruel and selfish as it was, forced me to grow, to find my voice, to learn how to protect myself even when no one else would. It taught my dad too. About presence. About slowing down and seeing his child for who she really was, not who someone else painted her to be. These days, we talk like old friends. He still sends me silly memes and bad dad jokes. I visit for the holidays, and Elaine always has my favorite cinnamon bread waiting. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it because I know there's someone out there who's being silenced, who's being doubted, and they need to hear this. Your truth matters. Speak it, even if your voice shakes. There was one memory I hadn't told anyone about, not even my dad. It happened just a few weeks after Vanessa moved in. I had come home early from school, surprise early dismissal, and the house was unusually quiet. As I crept upstairs, I heard Vanessa on the phone again. No, she's just a kid, she said sharply. Easy to control. She's desperate for attention. I just need to make sure she doesn't ruin this. I remember standing there, frozen on the stairs, the weight of her words pressing on my chest. That's when I started doubting myself, wondering if maybe she was right, if I really was the problem. It took years to unlearn that lie. And now, when I think back on it, I realize how intentional it all was. The gaslighting, the subtle digs, the way she'd smile while twisting the knife. It wasn't just about my dad. She needed me out of the way too. And I nearly let her win. If you're still listening, if you've made it this far, thank you. I know my story isn't the loudest or the most dramatic, but it was real. It shaped me. And maybe, just maybe, it reminds you of something you've been through too. Maybe you had someone try to rewrite your truth. Maybe you've been painted as the villain in your own story. Maybe you've had to fight just to be believed. To you, I say this. You are not alone. I spent years thinking I had to earn love, that I had to shrink myself to be accepted, that if I just tried harder, they'd finally see me. But the truth is, I was always enough. You are too. Don't wait for someone else to tell you that. Say it to yourself first. Every day, until you believe it. Because your story matters. And you deserve to be the one who writes it. After Vanessa left and the dust settled, I started therapy. At first, it was awkward. I didn't know how to talk about the hurt without feeling like I was complaining. But my therapist helped me understand that pain doesn't need permission to exist. Week by week, we peeled back the layers. We talked about boundaries, about guilt, about how easily children can carry blame that was never theirs to begin with. I realized how many moments I had minimized, how often I had said it wasn't that bad, just to make it easier for everyone else. But it was bad, and acknowledging that was the first step toward healing. Eventually, I started volunteering at a youth shelter. I sat with girls who had stories like mine, different details, same ache in their voices. I didn't try to fix them. I just listened. And maybe that was enough. To offer what I never had. Someone who believed them without question. One of the earliest signs that something was wrong came during my sophomore year of high school. I had stayed late to rehearse for the school play. When I got home, Vanessa was already pacing in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Where were you?" she snapped. I told her about rehearsal, even showed her the email from my drama teacher. But she didn't care. "I think you're hiding something," she said coldly. "Girls like you crave attention. It's pathetic." That night, she threw out my script, claiming it was a distraction from real life. I cried myself to sleep, quietly, so my dad wouldn't hear. It wasn't just the insult, it was the erosion of something I loved. A slow, deliberate unraveling of anything that gave me joy. Looking back, I see how calculated it all was. She didn't just want to turn my father against me. She wanted to break me from the inside out. And I almost let her. There was one person who saw through Vanessa from the very beginning, my Aunt Lydia. She was my dad's younger sister, a bit of a rebel in the family, never afraid to speak her mind. During one visit, I caught her staring at Vanessa with a raised brow. Later, when we were alone, she whispered, "That woman doesn't like you. I don't trust her." It was the first time someone acknowledged what I had been feeling for months. She hugged me tight before she left and said, "Hang in there, sweetheart. You're stronger than you know." I held on to those words like a life raft, replayed them in my head when the silence got too heavy, when the walls felt too close. Lydia passed away 2 years later. Cancer. I never got to tell her how much that moment meant to me, but I carry it with me still. Proof that someone saw me and believed me when no one else did. Vanessa didn't just meddle with my relationship with Dad. She also found ways to poison my friendships. There was a girl named Natalie. We'd been best friends since 6th grade. Practically inseparable. One day, after Natalie came over for a sleepover, Vanessa pulled me aside the next morning. "I don't like the way she looks at your dad," she said, stone-faced. "That girl's trouble." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But she wasn't smiling. Within weeks, she began planting doubts in my father's head too. Little comments, subtle jabs. "She's a bad influence. I think she's sneaking boys into your house when you're not around." It didn't take long before Natalie stopped getting invited, then stopped calling. I asked her what happened. She told me my dad told her not to come back. I cried for days. I never told her the truth, that it wasn't him. It was Vanessa. She isolated me, piece by piece, until I was alone. There was one night I'll never forget. It was around midnight, and I had snuck into the kitchen to grab some water. I overheard Vanessa on the phone again. "No, I've got him right where I want him. Once the papers are signed, it's done. She's just a loose end." I didn't breathe. The next morning, I told Dad what I heard. But he looked tired, defeated. He just said, "I'm sure there's a good explanation." That was when I knew I couldn't stay in that house anymore. I packed a bag that night, snuck out through the back door, and took the first bus to my aunt's house 3 towns away. When I arrived, Lydia's old husband, now remarried, opened the door, stunned. But when I told him everything, he said just one thing: "Thank you for surviving this long." I broke down in his arms. That night wasn't an escape. It was my rebirth. Staying with Uncle Ray, Lydia's widower, was like stepping into sunlight after years underground. He didn't ask me to explain myself right away. He just gave me space. A bed. Silence. The first few days, I slept more than I spoke. But gradually, I began to open up. I told him about Vanessa, about the false theft accusation, about the coldness from my father. He listened, really listened, and then said, "You don't need to prove your worth to anyone who makes you question it." Those words changed everything. He helped me enroll in a local community college. He even offered to drive me to therapy twice a week. I got a part-time job at a bookstore. The owner, an older woman named Hattie, became something of a mentor. One afternoon, she told me, "You're not broken. You're rebuilding." I cried right there in the stockroom. It was the first time in years I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. About a year after I left, I received a letter from my father. It was handwritten. His penmanship looked shakier than I remembered. He apologized, not for what Vanessa had done, but for not listening to me, for not protecting me, for doubting me. He wrote, "I see now how much I failed you. I thought I was keeping peace, but I was just ignoring the war inside our home." He wanted to meet, to talk, to make things right. Against my instincts, I agreed, on the condition that Vanessa wouldn't be there. We met at a quiet park bench. He looked older, softer, like time had finally caught up with him. "I left her," he said. Those 3 words hit like thunder. He told me how her lies finally caught up with her, how the affair she swore never happened blew up in public, how she tried to twist the narrative, but the truth spilled anyway, and how, in the silence after, he realized the only real family he ever had was the one he pushed away. I didn't forgive him right away. There was too much broken between us, years of silence, abandonment, and pain. But we began writing letters. Not emails. Letters. He would tell me about therapy, about how he was unlearning the patterns that let Vanessa control him. I told him about my bookstore job, about the classes I was taking, about the apartment I had just signed a lease for. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then, on my college graduation day, I saw him in the crowd. No Vanessa, no shadow, just him. He held a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite. He cried when I walked across the stage. After the ceremony, he hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on life, even when I gave up on you." In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything to Vanessa or reclaiming lost time. It was about healing piece by piece and choosing to keep going. No matter how much they tried to destroy me, I was still standing, and stronger than ever. Years passed. I moved cities, finished my master's degree, and opened my own small bookstore. I called it Lydia's Light, in honor of the woman who first believed me when no one else did. The walls were lined with old books, and the smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. It became a little sanctuary for people like me, the overlooked, the underestimated, the rebuilding. Sometimes, I'd get letters from girls who followed my blog, stories I shared anonymously about surviving abuse, manipulation, and finding strength again. Each message was a reminder my pain wasn't pointless. It had been transformed into something healing. One day, a woman came into the store with her teenage daughter. She looked around, bought a poetry book, then whispered, "Thank you for writing what you write. You saved her life." I cried after they left. It didn't matter if Vanessa still told her side somewhere. I knew mine, and I was living proof that truth always finds the light. Not long ago, I got a message through social media. It was from Vanessa. I almost didn't open it. My hands trembled just seeing her name. She wrote, "I know you'll never forgive me, but I hope one day you'll understand." There was no apology, no ownership, just that. I stared at the screen for a long time before deleting the message. Then I opened my journal and wrote, "I don't need your apology. I already set myself free." A week later, I visited the old neighborhood one last time. I stood outside my childhood home, now with different curtains, a new car in the driveway, strangers inside. But I didn't feel sad. I felt released. That house no longer had a hold on me. Those memories didn't own me. As I walked away, I smiled. Not because I won, but because I no longer needed to. This journey wasn't about revenge. It never really was. It was about reclaiming the pieces of myself that others tried to scatter. The girl who once felt invisible now stood at the center of her own life, not for attention, not for approval, but because she finally believed she deserved to be there. I stopped chasing closure from people who thrived on silence. I stopped rewriting memories to make others look better than they were. Instead, I built something new. A future stitched from scars, yes, but stitched with my own hands. Sometimes, healing looks like soft mornings and second chances. Sometimes, it's quiet, undramatic, but powerful. And in that quiet, I found everything I had ever searched for. Not justice, not apologies, but peace.